Okay, so the recording is going, and once again, welcome you to MELS 601 Zoom session, and that is February. I guess I'm trying to push the year. I guess that's a combination of February and September, but it is September the 5th, 2018. We are recording this, and of course, we'll post it online this evening or tomorrow for you to review, and also for those who couldn't make it this evening to look at. Do want to pull up, I'm sharing my screen right now. You should be seeing let me pull that up again. Should be seeing the schedule that, hold on just a minute. It's not sharing. Let me do this. Okay. There we go. You should be seeing the schedule that we've got posted on the course shell, and for September from the 5th. So, Dr. Church, can you see that okay?
Can.
Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I'm going to turn my volume up a little bit. I'm in a different room than I normally am. I'm going to try not to do some feedback on my voice, but I am going to turn my speakers up a little bit, and then we'll get situated here in just a second. Okay, this evening on the schedule, we're going to kind of revisit ABSL Task 1 and Task 2, take another look at the rubrics and the prompts. But the main thing I wanted to accomplish for this evening is go over the internship course shell in Blackboard with you. We may talk a little bit about disposition and competencies, peer reviewing. I think Dr. Church last week and through your course shell has pretty much addressed that. Certainly, if you have any questions in regards to that, let us know this evening. Zoom, I know before we even left the session last week, you were all setting up separate sessions and making plans to do your Zoom sessions. So I feel like you probably got a good handle on that. Dr. Church may have some things he wants to talk about as far as the discussion board and the course shell, and we'll certainly get into time to that. Not necessarily going to go over task stream this evening, unless there's any other thoughts by Dr. Church. I think maybe we'll save task stream for another week. I think that you're not really going to need to do anything in task stream. Your CC1s, your clinical coach 1, should be coming out to you if they haven't already. Maybe getting on the task stream to set up your competency folios. But as far as really getting into task stream, really not anything you're going to have to do with that for a while. So we're probably going to let that sit for another week. And we'll get into more specifics next week on that. Dr. Church, is there anything that you'd like to add at this point?
Not at this point.
Okay.
Good to see everybody tonight.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so let's go back. I want to talk a little bit about ABSL 1 and 2, and let me pull up the scale handbook. And this is always my go-to. I know in your course shell and certainly in the syllabus that was prepared for you, there's some information there about the prompts, about the artifact in itself. And first thing is don't get hung up so much on the terminology. The ABSL as a whole, you'll hear it called different things. We used to call it several different things when this program first started. Artifact 1, evidence 1, so on and so forth. But the ABSL, tried to address it as the ABSL, and each ABSL has a separate task, and you may hear those tasks referred to as evidences or artifacts. Basically, that's task 1, task 2, and task 3, all the way through task 4, and that's what we'll continue to talk about and call it. We'll try to refer to it, the ABSL, as the ABSL, and the task as the task, and not by some other terminology. But if you see you may run across some old documents that we've used to help students in the past, and especially on, I guess, on the core shell and the internship shell. So if you run across some of those terminologies that might have been that might be outdated right now, certainly if you have any questions on that, just let us know. But the ABSL is, as we said last week, its main purpose is to get you involved in some type of improvement in student learning. To begin that is you need to know and set up, research the tenets of a professional learning community. Certainly, you may already be a part of a PLC. They're pretty commonplace now in education. You may be a part of, may have been part of one for a long time. Many cases, I'm not saying all cases, but many cases, people, your principal or your assistant principal may walk up to you and say, "Hey, I'm going to put you on this PLC." Or your department head, if you're in a high school, may have came to you and said, "Hey, we're going to be part of the PLC. We're starting the PLC." And that might have occurred without any real description of research as to what a professional learning community is. So just to make sure that everybody's on the same page as to what a professional learning community is, and when you do things to affect student learning, they need to be evidence-based. That's repeated several times in ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act, which pretty much replaced No Child Left Behind, which originally came out of the Elementary Secondary Education Act of 1965. But ESSA talks a lot about evidence-based. If you're going to do something to have an effect on student improvement, if you're going to spend time, money, resources, training in that, then whatever you pick needs to have some type of evidence that, hey, this is really going to work. This is proven some other place and some other point in time, in some other pieces of parts of the nation, that this is really worth doing, that there's evidence to support your decision and the expenditure of your time and resources. So when we talk about evidence-based, you need to know that a professional learning community is evidence-based, and basically how to set up a professional learning community. What are some of the core components of a professional learning community that needs to be in place for it to be successful? So that's why we're asking you to do that that research before diving right in and just going along with professional learning community. Know what it's really about, and know some of those key components, so as a leader you can incorporate those key components into setting that up from the very beginning, from ground zero. And that way you have a good solid foundation as you become an administrator, and you continue to do that, and you'll be working with professional learning communities through this program. You have a good core understanding of what that is. And that, along with that is getting permission from your principal to set that up, picking the people to be on your PLC team, and going through that team. Once that team is established, going through them with them, what's the purpose and vision of this professional learning community. And then task 2, if you haven't started that last week, which I feel like everybody pretty much did because of the conversations that I saw happening in the chat room, I feel like you're pretty good and everybody's in good shape. But go ahead and get in that started. If you didn't start that last week, really need to start that this week. Set up your team, have the research, start writing those things down. Start pulling that research, making notes, getting prepared to put it into narrative form. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. The second part of that, and that's task 2, and that's the part that if you haven't started to engage that task yet, it would, the due dates are all in your syllabus and in the course shell, and Dr. Church can better address those due dates, so you know better when you kind of need to have a game plan as to when you're going to have this done and this done and this done. But if you haven't started to engage in that task 2, probably need to do that sometime in the next few days. And that's just a matter of pulling your data together. I know the state school board, if you're in North Carolina, I know some of you are in South Carolina, but the North Carolina State Board of Education approved all the data this week. There's been quite a bit of conversation about the school data, and all the scores and the assessment information has been approved. So if you haven't done that already, I'm sure at your school you're going to start reviewing that. And that's any type of data at your school that's going to affect student learning. So you and your team need to pull that data together and and begin to have collaborative conversations on that. Do some research of all of the available data that is going to be correlated to student learning. That look for gaps, look for different situations where the data shows you that there may be some part of the school that needs to be addressed. So that's task one and task two. And we went over that last week. This is just kind of a little review, so I don't mean to insult your intelligence or bore you. But as many things that's going on in this program, I think it's a good idea to review quite often. It's always good for me, especially at my age, to hear some things several times. Maybe basically by the second or third time I've heard it, I get it in my head, but it takes a while for me to grasp that. So I hope that's the same for you. So we talked about task one and task two. Now, with that information, with all that action that you're generating right now, you're getting a email permission from your principal, you're picking your team, you're kind of making notes as to why you picked this person to be on the team, you're researching some of the purposes and what's a professional learning community look like, what's norms, what's protocols, how are those established, how do you establish the mission of a professional learning community. You're taking all that in those notes and you're generating all those actions. And at some point in time, write that down. Now, there's two parts to this. You want to write down the narrative, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. I don't want to, we really hesitate to give you a hardcore example of what that looks like, because in doing that, we kind of feel like we might hinder or confine somebody's creativity. Well, how does the narrative look like? What should there be a title page? Should there be subheadings? Should there be a table of contents and all that? And we kind of really hesitate to do that. I'll show you an example after a while, but it doesn't mean that it has to look like that. There are some things that need to be included in that narrative. And we can address that as well, but it doesn't have to be a cookie cutter. Everybody's narrative can look a little bit different. It does have to be professionally written. Bullets are fine when the content calls for bullets. 3 pages of bullets is not fine. And, we can kind of hash that out as we go along. But that narrative needs to tell the story. In this case, and task one, that narrative needs to, first of all, you pretty much need to give some information on your school or the site that you're at, if you're in the central office, what environment you're going to engage in this MELS 601 in this APSL. In most of the time, it's somebody's school. So you need to tell the reader about the school. What are the dynamics of the school? What's the demographics of the school? What kind of community does the school sit in? What's a lot of that qualitative data that creates the culture of that school? And you need to let the reader know what that is, because in setting up your professional learning community and looking at the data and determining gaps and then forming an action plan to affect those gaps, the culture of that school is going to be a big part of what you see and what you choose to address. So it's always a good idea to share the demographics of the school and the dynamics of the school in your narrative, so that the reader has a good understanding of what the culture of your school is, as much as can be determined by reading the paper. So that narrative, like I said, professionally written, APA style. You give some background information on the school. Don't go to the census information from 1995 and write down everything you can. The point of this is not to make your